Hector here, and I'm finally going over Daniel Lopez's top 8 Volcanion list. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to go over some of the cards that he played, more or less, talk about some of the matchups that he had. Unfortunately, Daniel is a little camera shy, so he will not be with us today. However, you know, me and him, we did play the same decks minus one card, so it was a 59 card mirror about. So I'll talk about some of my matchups briefly. I'll talk about some of the ones he had told me about. I do understand all the deck decisions and the deck choices, so we'll talk about that as well. All right, so I ended up going 5-1-3, and of course everybody knows he did make top 8 with the list. So we have, starting off, Shaman EX, of course, you know, typical setup mon. As you can clearly see, I don't have 2 of them. If I did, I would have a lot more PTCGO content for you. But Shaman basically set up Sky Return. It was really good throughout the day, especially when you consider Parallel City and Hoopa. It allows you to get off to an amazing start and really, you know, set up like the card is supposed to do. We also have 3 baby Volcanions. So a lot of people say you should play 4 baby Volcanions. A lot of people critiqued me throughout the day afterwards, and when I told them I only played 3. But to be honest, you only really need 3. The only reason you would play a 4th is if you want to absolutely start with it. The way this Volcanion deck runs is very fast, and you don't always need to start with the baby. Or if you do, if you don't start with the baby, you can run through to get to that baby in order to retreat into it if you need to, like let's say you don't start with it. So because of the way this deck is built, you only really need 3, and to be honest, you only really use 2 throughout the game. So that is the reason that he only played 3 of them, and to be honest, I never missed the 4th one. I think that if you do play Volcanion, if you're playing the faster version like this one, you really don't need that 4th one. We have Hoopa here, Hoopa EX, of course, Scoundrel Ring, very, very good ability. Hope it's not prize. I did end up starting with Hoopa. I think I started with Hoopa like twice throughout the day, so unlucky me, and I might have started with Shaman like twice too. So that kind of sucks when you start with it. It sucks when the prize, but when Hoopa works, it works. And again, because you play the Parallel City, you can drop it, get rid of Hoopa, get rid of Shaman. They'll probably end up replacing it, so it just frees up that bench space. And then we have Volcanion EX, which is kind of the heart and soul of the deck. You have Steam Up. Once during your turn, you can discard a Fire Energy card, and the basic Pokemon attacks do 30 more damage. And of course, we play 4 of those. Now, Energy Retrieval, it says 1 here, my bad. And it's actually supposed to be 3. Sorry about that. So 3 Energy Retrieval. A lot of people play 4, but because you have the Fisherman in your deck, you don't necessarily need to play 4 of those. 3 suffices with the Energy Retrieval. We have Escape Rope, and another big card is Max Elixir. So this is probably the biggest card in the deck, and one of the thif that really differentiates this Volcanion list from a lot of other ones is the fact that you play Max Elixir. Now, a lot of people might say, Max Elixir, why would you play it? Because if you're playing Max Elixir, you're kind of being counterproductive, because the energies that you're putting onto your Pokemon are energies that you would want to be using with Steam Up. Now, that might be true, but at the same time, if you can get a Volcanion set up T1, T2, it helps you to win a lot of matchups. Primarily the mirror. Like with Max Elixir, you blow the mirror out because you just set up your Volcanions so much faster, and by the time you Lysander up their first one, they only might have 1 to respond to you, and at that time you probably have 1 to respond to theirs, and then you might have another one that's almost built up. So Max Elixir flat out wins you the mirror. I had no losses. I played 2 never lost against the mirror. This deck, because of Max Elixir, blows through the mirror. Another thing is Greninja. Greninja, you have to have Max Elixir if you want to consistently beat it, because you have to deny them from being able to get out of the Greninja break. If they're able to get out of a Greninja break and you're not taking those knockouts every single turn, you're not outspeeding them because of Max Elixir, they will eventually get out that break and overpower you and defeat you. It also helps you to donk them. I played 1 Greninja. I donked him both games, game 1 and game 2, because of Max Elixir. I was able to, just rush through my deck, hit the Max Elixir, and I was able to win from there. And as you saw on stream, Daniel was able to beat Greninja as well, and because he hit the Max Elixir in order to knock out the Greninja is really, really fast. And with Max Elixir, you almost always hit it. I might have missed Max Elixir 3 times throughout the day, maybe 3 or 4 times in all my games. So because you play 12 energies, like you're always going to hit it. And are there moments where you have Max Elixir on you have Volcanions on your board with energy, and it's kind of like, oh, I need to steam up? Yes, but with that being said, because you're going so fast with the Max Elixirs, sometimes you can actually retreat for 3, and energy retrieval or fisherman, get those energies back because you're so far ahead as it is. Take that important knockout and then just continue to like manually build up your attacker. So Max Elixir is just so important in this deck, and I think that is one of the main reasons why this Volcanion deck was able to rise above so many others. So we have 2 Switch, 4 Trainer's Mail, very, very good card. As you can see, there are no Acrobikes. Acrobikes in Volcanion can make for really awkward decisions. So, as opposed to, let's say you have Acrobike as opposed to Max Elixir. Like, okay, yeah, I'm putting this fire energy in the discard, or you could be attaching this fire energy to a Volcanion and potentially setting up. So in that case, Max Elixir is always the better card. As opposed to Acrobike. And then Trainer's Mail, again, it helps you dig for your Max Elixirs. It helps you dig for your energy retrievals, supporters. I think that more or less, if your deck can play Max Elixir, then you should definitely be playing, not Max Elixir, but Trainer's Mail. If your deck can play Trainer's Mail, then you most likely definitely should be playing Trainer's Mail. All right, and we also have 4 Ultra Ball. Ultra Ball is a really good card, again, because it helps you to get out those Hoopas. It helps you to get the baby Volcanion. If you miss the Hoopa, Shaman, whatever, of course, Ultra Ball. It also is a really good card because it helps you discard those fire energies. A lot of times I would have people go turn 1 Hex on me, and they'd be like, haha, you can't Hoopa now. You can't steam up in order to attack with your baby Volcanion. But Ultra Ball, when you're under Hex, you can get rid of those fires and then, use Power Heater to still attach those energies so you kind of don't miss a turn effectively. 4 Via Seeker, which is basically the standard. 1 Fisherman, which I believe that you should always run in Volcanion, at least 1. 2 Lysander. 1 N. 1 Olympia. I know that's been a big card this weekend, and as you can see, the deck doesn't play Ranger. Now, I will say that Daniel did have some issues against Vileplume because of this, but Olympia and Ranger effectively, outside of that Vileplume matchup, they're kind of the same card, more or less, because with Ranger, you're taking away that ability from Volcanic Heat. You're taking away that ability from Volcanic Heat, so let me just bring up Olympia here. You're taking away that effect from Volcanic Heat, and you can attack with that same Volcanion. But with Olympia, it's kind of like you switch your active to maybe a Volcanion with a Float Stone or a Hoopa with a Float Stone, and then you just switch back into it. So it's kind of like doing the same thing. However, you get to heal, and sometimes it's just a good switch card when you need to get out of the active position, whereas Ranger, in certain matchups, it is a very dead card. So Olympia is always the better choice, in our opinion, versus Ranger. And then versus Greninja, if they get Greninja Breakout and they get a Shadow Stitching off, at that point you might have already lost the game anyway. So that would probably be the only situation where I would think that you might want to say, oh, okay, well, I can play Ranger over Olympia. But if you're that scared, you can beat Greninja without Ranger. That's basically what I need to say. The deck can beat Greninja without Ranger, and as that was documented several times this weekend. Then you have the 4 Sycamore. Now, this is a card I definitely want to go into detail about. Parallel City. So Parallel City in Volcanion is like a double-edged sword. It can win you games, and it can lose you games. And it can, like, when you play it down, it can be winning you a game at first, and then it can be and then that same game that you're winning, like Parallel City, later on down the line can cause you to lose it. It was a big card this weekend, and I am very glad I played it. So this is where me and Daniel's list differ. So in the original list, which is the list that I played, we, or more or less he, I hate using the word we, he played 2 Parallel City. And I told him, I was like, I don't know if, because he was like, Fighting Fury Bell, you don't really need it. You go so fast, you hit so hard. And I was like, well, it's just such a good card. Like, plus 40 HP, plus 10 attack. I was like, we really need, the deck really needs Fighting Fury Bell. And I kept pestering him about it the night before. And in the morning, I was even asking, you know, some of my teammates, I was like, do you think I should add the Fighting Fury belt? And I was like, you know what, I trust Daniel. I'll just go ahead and keep the 2 Parallel City. And so after I turned my deck in, I found out that he took out a Parallel and he added a Fighting Fury belt. Nice job, Daniel. So I played with 2 Parallel Cities. So as far as my experience with Parallel City, it won me games and it lost me games. I would want to say it was more helpful to me overall than it was hurtful to me. The biggest thing with Parallel City is that in certain matchups you need to lay it so that it blocks your opponent. But sometimes that minus 20 damage, especially when I'm not playing Fighting Fury belt, it hurt me a lot. I remember in Mewtwo that it screwed me over both ways. So like one game it was facing where I was doing 20 less damage. So I kept missing the knockouts on Mewtwo. Another game, it was facing where I could only bench 3. So I couldn't bench like that extra Volcanion to even hit the damage to knock Mewtwo out. So that was an issue with Fighting Fury belt in the deck. Excuse me, not Fighting Fury belt, but Parallel City. However, in so many other matchups, like versus Greninja, you can lay it so that they do 20 less damage because Greninja can already knock you out just on its own as it is already. So if you add that, you know, it's taking away from their ability to even hit knockouts on several other things. In the mirror, you use it to get rid of your Shaman and get rid of your Hoopa. And that's what I use it for a lot throughout the day. You know, you Hoopa, you Volcanion, Shaman, and then you Parallel, you get rid of that Shaman, you get rid of that Hoopa, so you make it so that they can't disrupt you that harshly or set up any knockouts later on down the line. And then plus, if you stick your Parallel City in the way you want to stick it in, before they can stick it on you the way you want to stick it, they can't replace it. So another thing, it was like the counter, because we knew people were going to be playing Parallel City against us. So it's kind of like a way to counter their counters, so to speak. Now, there were certain games where my opponent would get it out before me. I think one time my opponent even laid it the wrong way. And, you know, that would suck. But remember, it's a negative effect both ways, so to speak, except for when your opponent doesn't, you know, if your opponent doesn't have the elemental Pokemon, I mean, they can lay it so you only can place 3 on your bench, and then I guess it's negative. But the 3 on your bench is not that bad against Volcanion if you can play it right. So Parallel City was really, really big throughout the day. We're still debating, though, if, you know, afterwards we were talking about it, and then he was like, maybe we shouldn't play stadiums, but I was like, you know, we definitely, another stadium, is it Parallel City? Maybe not, because you just run that risk factor when you play it, because it can screw you both ways, just, you know, because it's Parallel City and just because of the type of deck Volcanion is. So, he played the Fighting Fury belt. That is what I didn't play. He did say it won him a lot of games. Like, a lot of games. Had I played Fighting Fury belt, the difference between me and him is I ran up against, like, 4 Mewtwo's. So, with no Fighting Fury belts. So, that matchup was ridiculously hard for me. I think I beat 1. I tied 1. No, I beat 1, tied 2, lost to 1. So, the Mewtwo was... I don't see how I hit 4 Mewtwo's throughout the day. That was kind of like the one deck I really didn't want to play. And not having Fighting Fury belt when I lost and when I tied. So, the Fighting Fury belt, I definitely think that, you know, you should play it. He played it. He did really well with it. He said it won him a lot of games because, you know, 220 HP on Volcanion is ridiculously good. In addition, it's really good in the mirror if you can Fighting Fury belt a baby. Because the baby, they can knock out each other with steam ups. And if you Fighting Fury belt, you can, I believe you can steam up 3 times and knock out a baby with Fighting Fury. Or is it 3? No, it's not 3 times. Something like that. Like, the math ends up being a lot better with Fighting Fury belt with the baby against a lot of different things. And then it saves you from getting knocked out from 4 steam ups if you have baby on baby. So, Fighting Fury belt is really good in this deck. I think that I would probably add another one if I played again. Like, I know he played 1. But I would probably try to add 2 to this deck, to the build that we currently have. And then 3 float stones. So as far as switching cards, you have 2 switch. You have not Warp Point. Sorry, I'm an old school player. Escape Rope. You have 3 float stone. So you have 6 switch cards as it is, and then you also have Olympia. So the float stones really came in handy. I don't think there was ever really a time where I got stuck. But as you saw when Dan lost, Fright Night Evoltal is really, really good against this deck. I played one Evoltal deck and I ended up tying it. In game 3, he had like 3 Fright Nights. But I think I still could have took that game because I was just going to stream the knockouts on them. But Fright Night is really, really, really difficult for this deck to deal with. And so that's why we do, the deck does play the Olympia, the 2-switch, the 1 escape rope, or whatever. So, and then you have 12 fire energy. Again, you can afford to run the 12 fire energy because there's always something to do with energy in this deck. You have energy retrieval, you have max elixir, you have steam up, you have fisherman. So there's rarely hands where, this is not a deck where, I have too many energies in my hand. I just steam up, steam up, steam up, steam up. And it kind of thins your deck because sometimes you can just steam up without even needing to have to use it. So steam up is a really, really, really good ability. I love Volcanion. I love how fast it is. So as far as matchups for this deck goes, I think that Volcanion is good against a majority of the meta. I think the only thing he really struggled with was the Vileplume deck because he played a Lacquer Ranger, so he beat it once. I think he 2-1'd it once, and then he lost to, I think it was Alex, he lost to twice throughout the season. Those are his only 2 losses. So I think that it does kind of struggle because it doesn't have that Ranger, but Vileplume is not unbeatable if you draw well enough and you play it right. The Fright Night Evoltal, he was doing really good against it, but his opponent did kind of come back late game because he couldn't, I think it was either Olympia or Lysander he could not get to. He just kept getting end and end and end. Because of Olympia, I think the matchup is winnable, but it might be like 60-40 on Evoltal's side. But other than that, I think Volcanion, as far as this deck, this version, it definitely beats the Mirror. I played Scizor. It handily beats that. The Gyarados, a lot of people were wondering, like, how did he beat Gyarados? I think one game, I think he just said he steamed through him. He just kind of like set up really quick, took a lot of quick knockouts. I know he said the baby Volcanion with 4 steam ups, or I think even with 3 steam ups, because Gyarados already does the 20 damage to itself, or it already has the 2 damage counters on it because you have to bench the magic card. So he said the steam up, or the steam up power heater, the baby Volcanion was able to take knockouts on Gyarados to kind of keep the exchange even. So I think that's how he said he won one of the games. And another one of the games, the Gyarados did play Shaman. So he said he Lysandered Shaman twice and took knockouts there, and then he just took 2 prizes off something else. And he said because of that, he was able to win that game because he could just Lysander around and hit the Shamans. So that's how he was able to beat the Gyarados because, the deck is really fast. It's really consistent. Greninja, I've already talked about that. All you have to do is really go fast, outpower them. If Greninja leaves their basic active and gives you a chance to attack it and they have no bench, this deck can easily bench Greninja. It's not uncommon for this deck to hit for 190 damage on the second turn of the game because of max elixir and just how fast it is. The Darkrai, Garbodor, Giratina, I think that one could be tough, definitely. I think it just depends. I think I would have to see that one play out because you play Max Elixir, they play Max Elixir. I think it would all depend on how fast they were able to get their Garb out. Giratina does do a good job in cutting off float stones, so that could play a factor. So I would just have to see that one play out. So I didn't face it all day. I'm not sure if Daniel played the Darkrai Giratina matchup. I know he beat a couple of mirrors. I know he beat a Rainbow. I think he tied a Rainbow Road. And what else was there? Gardevoir was also played a lot, and I do think that he played our teammate Omar. He was able to beat the Mega Gardevoir Despair Ray again because of so fast. He also did play some other Gardevoir variants, and he beat all of those as well. So he did a really, really good job with this deck. Do I think that this is the gold standard of Volcanion? In my opinion, yes. I don't think I would play Volcanion any other way. I do like the versions that the version that is a bit more conservative and it is a bit slower. I do like it, but with this metagame, you can't afford to play it because it's not really going to beat everything. And I think this is the only way to play Volcanion if you really want to have a decent chance at beating everything across the board, because the overall speed and the power and the consistency of the deck is going to help you win a lot of matchups outright, and you really don't have time to, play games and be slow in this format, even with a deck like Volcanion. You just don't. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. I really enjoyed going over it. I will try to play some games, stream some games with it, so you guys can see it in action as soon as I get that other shaman. And if you enjoy it, like and subscribe. Thank you for Daniel Lopez. Congrats to Daniel Lopez. Congrats to all the top 8 finishers this past weekend at the Florida Regional Championships. I had a wonderful time being there, interacting with all the players, and helping the game grow. Because, again, at the end of the day, it's about the game, and that's what we're all here for. So, bye, like, and subscribe.